all of these parental control platforms, just trying to find the right filter, make the boundaries a little tougher. And my wife says to me one day, she says, why do we have to wait until they're bound up in addiction? Can we help families before they're addicted? And I was like, we're going to give it away. And she was like, huh? And she paused, and that was the first time she had paused in any idea I had said. What do you think? And she goes, it's bold, but I like it.
Just do something. Doing nothing is no longer an option.
Welcome to the SafetyNet podcast by ArkCybr. I'm your host, Josh Lewis, and with me is my friend, Sean Ardizzone, who is the genius, hacker, brains, and heart of the podcast. So, Sean, I'm super excited because this is the very first episode of this new podcast. So, for our listeners out there, what I'd love to do is let's start right out the gate. What is this podcast about? What's it going to be about in the future?
Basically, the podcast is, I just want to have conversations on here that will help others have a safer internet experience. And whatever that looks like, through talking about how to secure your devices and how to just be smarter, make better choices.
This is the SafetyNet podcast by ArkCybr. So we came up with the name, the SafetyNet podcast, but this is really the podcast of ArkCybr. And what I'd love is if people aren't familiar with ArkCybr, maybe they are, they just don't know the origin story. I'd love for you to share that on this episode. So let's talk through, I want to give you the floor for however long you want to talk about it. And let's just talk about your story. What's your background? How did things in your life play out in such a way that you decided to start this thing called ArkCybr?
I've been in technology for over 20 years. I started off as a cable puller, learned how to do telephone systems, Nortel, Avaya, did all that. And back in the 90s, a thing called convergence happened. And all of us phone people had to learn how to become data and network people. And so I had to learn how to do routing and switching and networks on top of what I knew traditionally as a switch was, a phone system. And as I was working in the voice industry, the data and the network industry, I noticed a common thread. They all had to be secured. They all had to have patches and updates and this and that. And I was way more interested in understanding, what happens if you don't have a patch, this and that. And so I, after about 15, 20 years, I started to move into security. And 2010, I really started to focus more into security while I was still doing some networking and some voice and some inside plant, outside plant work as a defense contractor overseas in Afghanistan. Spent 2 years over there, all over the country, doing all different kinds of technical jobs. And been in technology, like I said, since the 90s. And as a child, I was about 11 years old the first time I got exposed to pornography. I had my own battle with it into my late 20s. It actually led to the demise of 2 marriages. And after my second marriage fell apart, I had just reached out to my church counselor and just said, I need help. I need to do something. I keep messing up my families. And they told me there's a program in Kentucky, and I was living in South Florida at the time. And they said, there's a program in Kentucky. You can go to their live-in program and maybe they can help you there. And so I applied and I got accepted to the program. And in March of 2001, I moved from South Florida to Williamstown, Kentucky, and I entered the residential program. I graduated in January of 2002, and I moved back out into the regular world and just began kind of taking the steps that I had learned while I was in the program on how to live free from this stuff. And as I had battled in from 2002 until about 2020, I had fought with finding pornography, giving back over, putting filters in, trying a different filter, finding a way around it, hardening, getting another one, hardening it, finding a way around that one, and really just kind of had my own battle with all of these parental control platforms, just trying to find the right filter to help make the boundaries a little tougher. Well, in 2020, my oldest son, Alex, he got sick in March of 2020, actually, and he went into the hospital and everything stopped. I went down to South Florida to be with him. And in that process, he ended up passing away due to complications from liver failure and a few other things. And I was devastated, obviously, as my oldest son. He was 26 years old. And I reached out to a counselor. I needed help again. I just was not doing well. And in that process, the Lord started healing me. I was kind of just questioning, why and all of these things. I was actually in my battle. I had been working towards getting a certification as a biblical counselor to help men like me that were struggling. I had begun a purity group at our church, and I was leading that group, facilitating that group, and going through some of the curriculum from Pure Life Ministries week after week, and just sitting with other guys like me that were fighting and wanting to stay free from this stuff and the power that it has. And as I'm going through this counseling now for the death of my son, I met the counselor's name was Chuck Steinmetz, and as I'm working with Chuck, I'm healing, I'm getting a little better, and he says to me one day, you're kind of technical, right? And I was like, yeah, I know some stuff. And I was, being modest, but I was like, what's up? And he said, man, I got some counselees. They're really struggling with technology. Can you help their families make their devices, more difficult to get access to this stuff? And I was like, man, after everything the Lord has done for me through your ministry, just tell the families to call me. I'm not even going to charge them. Just have them call me. And so Chuck was like, well, it's up to you if you want to charge them or not. I'll let you know if they have, the ability to pay. If not, do it just kind of helping them out. And I was like, yeah, I'm fine with that. Well, they called, and the people, the families were calling, and I was walking them through over the phone on how to secure their router and how to secure their mobile devices and how to, just make things difficult so that, there's so much out there already readily available. And I was just showing them how to make it difficult. And so the families kept calling, and my wife says to me one day, she says, why do we have to wait until they're bound up in idolatry, in addiction? Can we help families before they're addicted? And I was like, oh my gosh, woman, yes, you're a genius. Absolutely, we can help families before this becomes an addiction. And that's where ArkCybr was born, out of my own personal struggle, my own grief, going back to counselor, and then my own, my own evil intention, finding ways around these filters. And then, the Lord took all of that I meant for evil, and he's using it for his purposes and his good. So we actually, the name of the company, for about 3 years before the company even came about. It was about 2017, and I was talking with a friend who worked for me on another company that was doing low voltage cabling just on the side. And I was like, man, I'd love for you to be a part of anything I do in the future, and how, what would we call it? And it was like Sean and Rob's Communications, Sean and Rob's Security Solutions, Rob and Sean's we just were wordsmithing a bunch of names. And I was like, Krutka and Ardizzone, security specialist, Ardizzone and Krutka cyber solutions, Ardizzone and Krutka, Ark, Ardizzone and Krutka. What do you think of that? He's like, oh, I love it. It's awesome. Well, so we had ArkCybr, but we had no company. Nothing had happened yet. And, then in the right time, it came about. And when my wife said that to me, I was like, that is what ArkCybr is for. That's what we're going to do. And it was like, we had the name, we just didn't have the vision. And then in 2021, we formed the corporation, and the vision was born. So.
Wow. That's amazing. Wow. Yeah. It's so cool to hear how kind of the Lord is just taking you on this journey, and ArkCybr is like this cross section of personal struggle, like tragedy, and also these skills and this heart that has kind of been coming through. Man, it's just super cool to see all of that. And so I let's make sure we super define this, because I think a lot of people can get confused about what's ArkCybr actually does. Is it a filtering service? Is it like, oh, is it something you put on your device? What is it that ArkCybr does?
Yeah, that's a great question, Josh, and it's actually one of the most frequently asked. We've done 5 or 6 industry trade shows for like homeschools, and basically we're standing at the booth, and the most common question I get is, okay, so you're a filter, you're a VPN, you're a browser, what are you?
Right.
And we're none of that. We're a cyber consulting service, and so
Mm.
basically you get our skills to help you make your devices more secure.
Mm.
Yeah, there's already enough apps. There's already enough devices out there. Some of them are absolutely fantastic technologies that are out there. Just people don't know how to use them. And what we want to do is come alongside you, show you if you already purchased something. We want to come alongside you and show you how to use that technology properly. There's a term where you're just so inundated with information, you
Yeah.
basically shut down and you just ignore it. And that's what
Right.
happens with a lot of these parental control platforms. They send so much information to the parents, to the receiver on the other end, and they just shut down. They stop reading it, they stop looking at it, and then it actually just becomes noise. We're a cyber consulting service. We help you make your internet safer. You get our skills. I'm a certified ethical hacker. I hold the CEH. I'm a certified pen tester. I have the Security Plus certification, but my favorite and most prestigious certifications are the Offensive Security Certified Professional, the OSCP, and the OSWP. Basically, I'm a hacker, and in the industry, if you say you're a hacker, you can take the CEH, and that's questions and answers and things like that. But the OSCP certification and the OSWP, the organization Offensive Security says, okay, you call yourself a hacker. Here's a certain number of boxes. You have 24 hours to break into all of these devices and gain full administrator rights over these boxes. And then you have 24 hours to write a complete report and tell us how you broke into those devices and tell us recommendations to fix those vulnerabilities. And so I earned that certification. I actually earned the OSCP and the OSWP. I'm working on my OSEP, which is the Experienced Penetration Tester, which is much tougher. It's a 48-hour exam instead of a 24. And then if you go for the higher, the OSEE, I think it's OSE3. Anyway, that is a 72-hour exam. And so, they actually, it's not just a question and answer, brain dump memory. This is put your skills to the test and write a report and show us that you can do it. And so I earned those credentials, I earned those certifications. And so, you're getting a real industry certified hacker helping you secure your stuff. So pen
That's so
tester,
cool, man.
hackers.
Yeah. What does PEN stand for?
Well, it's short for penetration tester. And so what
Got
we
it.
do is we attempt to penetrate networks that we have explicit permission to do. And our goal is to find the vulnerabilities before the adversaries, before the bad guys do. If we can find them and emulate what bad guys are doing, we can close the vulnerabilities. You can do bug bounties. You can find application pen testing, network pen testing, web application pen testing. So many different types of things that you can do in this field, in this industry, to help make software code good. I'm not in the software side as much. I can do some basic Python coding and some basic script debugging, but I'm not a coder. I'm a network pen tester, so I can do networks. I can do what they call pivoting, moving from east to west, north to south. North and south is when you go through the firewall. East and west is when you're already inside the firewall and you're moving from machine to machine, server to server, things like that. That's my absolute favorite thing to do. So you got to know
That's
a little bit
awesome.
about all of it to be able to do it successfully. So
Yeah, man, that's crazy. So I think what's most impressive about this is kind of like you were saying, like your favorite certification. It's not just you answer a bunch of questions and you can't like fluke hack into something, because you got to write a report on exactly how you did it and recommendations to fix that in the
yeah,
future. Like, so that's a big deal.
yeah. And the people reading that
I love
report,
that.
they know what they're doing. Offensive security, great bunch of people out there, and they're some of the greatest hackers in the world. And
Wow.
you're not going to fool them. So if and yeah, you can't fake that test. So it is proctored. Somebody's watching you the whole 24 hours
Wow.
you're taking it. So yeah.
Somebody like that is helping you, your family, your roommates, whoever, help to secure your devices, help to secure your network. That's amazing. So a service like that, man, that has to be like pretty expensive to use you guys, right? Like to hire you to help secure my family's network. Like that's probably going to be pretty expensive, right?
Yeah, that's the tough thing. But there's a surprise. Our service is free. We don't charge for our service. So
What? So okay, let's talk about that for a second. And I totally set that question up. I know it's free,
yeah,
but can you tell me why? Like again, like we've talked about kind of the different rates that you would normally charge different organizations and different things like that, and it's not expensive when you think about like how the value that you're bringing, but for a family that is really expensive. So why did you decide to go from you could charge people a good amount because of the value you're bringing to I'm going to do this for free? How did that come about?
yeah, that's a fantastic question. There's a funny story behind it. As we'd formed the corporation, we had put the business plan together. We started kind of figuring all the things out and how we're going to operate and some of the nuance, of all the things that were happening. And as we came down, what are we going to charge? What are we going to charge? We just kept pushing that ball farther down the road because we couldn't figure it out. And it's like you said, there's such a wide spectrum. If you go to enterprise and industry, there's people 6-figure salaries. If you go to Geek Squad or any of these places, some of them you can get up to $150 an hour just to get a person to spend an hour, and a lot of them have minimums. And so as we're trying to figure out how do we price ArkCybr, how do we make this affordable but worth it, and things like that. And I had a few business advisors as we were talking through this. One person was like, yeah, just you charge $10, you get a $10 video. People will just go crazy over that. They pay the $10 and yada yada yada. And one of my other advisors was like, have you ever done a $10 course? And I was like, oh yeah, I got like hundreds of them. He goes, yeah, how many of them did you finish? And I was like, oh, fair point. Like I have probably 200 $10 courses that are just sitting in my my queue to do, but because it didn't cost me anything, I didn't really, I got what I needed from it and then just kind of left it alone and didn't finish it. Whereas, and then he says, well, how much did you pay for your offensive security course and your certification? I was like, I paid about 10 grand for that whole thing when it was all said and done with lab time and all that stuff, and the Learn One and all these different things they had. And so as I was considering, I'm like, man, I have to come up with a price between $10 and $10,000 or $1,000 or whatever. I'm like, there's just no
Wow.
way. How am I
Yeah.
going to do this? And so I was like, okay, Lord, I need your help. I need to know how to price this thing. And this was around March, April, or May-ish of 2022. And Dallas Jenkins was coming on to YouTube, and he's talking about this little TV show that's getting ready to do season 3. So you're going to get to binge season 1 and season 2, and get it on YouTube. It's free and da da da. And I was like, so when I first heard Dallas talk, it was a few years back, and he was on social media talking about this pilot episode. And in this pilot episode, it was called The Shepherd. And as I'm watching this, I'm like, this is absolutely incredible. It was like, I mean, heartstrings, you could feel the emotion. It was just so powerful. And then I learned he filmed it in the back, his friend's backyard, I think in Dallas. And I was just like, wow. Well, at the end of that pilot, he said, if you want to invest and actually be, a Schedule K investor, actual holding real company stock, go to this site and invest, and you can own and help launch this TV show. And I was like, hey, honey, I'm going to invest in this thing. I think this is a great idea. Da da da. And so I invest. I become a whole, an LLC member, investor, blah blah blah. And as I'm watching now, all this stuff come on, because I'm in the partners, the behind the scenes videos. I get all these things. And here Dallas is talking about, putting this little TV show called The Chosen on, and season 1 and season 2, he's giving them away. It's pay it forward, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, shut up, Dallas. I'm trying to figure out how to price ArkCybr. I'm trying to figure out. And, he says it again, come out to, YouTube, and we're streaming it and it's all free, and just pay it forward. And then it was like a little light bulb moment. And I was like, pay it forward. Huh. So I hadn't said anything to my wife at that point, because up to that point, everything that I brought to her, she was like, no, it's a stupid idea. You can't do that. No, that's dumb. You can't do that. And, and then I yielded pretty much on everything, and was like, okay, I'll have to maybe come back to that. Or I would take it to the advisor and say, what do you guys think? And they'd be like, well, if your wife's saying no, you can't do it, because she's got to be on board. And so I was like, all right, well, we'll see what happens. So I didn't say anything to her that night. I just was like, okay, Lord, you're going to have to help her if I'm supposed to give this away. Cause I had a peace about it. I was like, this is, I think, real. So I went to bed, woke up the next morning, and she said to me, well, did you figure out how to price it yet? And I was like, we're going to give it away. And she was like, huh? And she paused, and that was the first time she had paused in any idea I had said. And I just kind of was like taken aback. Well, I went into the bathroom and started brushing my teeth. Well, what I didn't know was that she was convicted by how many times she had just trashed my idea and jumped down on me. And so she had said, okay, Lord, the next idea he brings to me, I'm not going to shoot him down. I'm just going to hold my tongue and think about it for a little bit. And I didn't know that. So I'm in the bathroom, I'm brushing my teeth, and I step out of the bathroom. I look at her and I'm like, what do you think? And she goes, it's bold, but I like it. And I was like, oh, we're on the same page. Yeah. So that's how we came up with the pay it forward model. So it doesn't cost anything. If you want to help us, you can. You go to our page, and there's options to do that. And if you don't, you still get the help, and it doesn't cost you a thing. Just a little bit of time with me. So
that is so crazy. Wow. So we've got this certified ethical hacker that is willing to spend time with families to secure their devices for free, and where you're really dependent on kind of the Lord and people who are willing to kind of pay it forward, whether I'm sure some people who hire who ask you to help will pay it forward themselves, but it also comes through just other people as well.
Yeah, we actually had a few people right out of the gate, as soon as we shared the idea with them. I mean, donated thousands of dollars to the pay it forward.
Wow.
And just we didn't ask for anything. We were just telling them the ArkCybr story, and they were so moved by it, they just gave to us. And I was just like, wow. I mean, I didn't expect that. I didn't even ask them for it. We just told them the vision, and they just came alongside of us. And as we go to the trade shows, we have been going to mostly homeschool trade shows to meet with families, because there's already enough apps and devices. There's already enough things that people just don't know how to use. And as they're using them, they're getting overwhelmed. And then there's just people that aren't doing anything, and doing nothing nowadays is not an option on the internet. Pornography is horrible. I had, my own story. It's been a battle my entire life, as far back as I can remember. And that's not the only danger on the internet. If you type the wrong word in the URL bar, you end up on a bad site, a malware site. If you click the wrong link, you end up on a hacker or scammer site. And that's the internet we've been given. And people aren't going to stop using the technology, and nor should they. They just need to have a lot of that risk reduced. And what we do is we help them make the best decisions by giving them the most amount of information, and they then take that information and choose what level of risk they're willing to accept. And so for families that have little children, they may want a platform like Griffin or things like that you can turn the internet on and off at certain times, at very specific times. You can see very detailed reports. Some families, they don't care so much about that. They want to give their families access to social media and things like that. So platforms like Bark are great for that, because they allow them to do it, but they report on that. Platforms like Accountable to You and Covenant Eyes, they let you go do whatever it is you're going to do, and then send the reports off to your accountability partner, so that you have everybody's on the same page. They know what's going on, and you can just have meaningful conversations about where the person is. So there's so many different types of things out there. We didn't want to just be another one getting lost in the noise of that shuffle. We want to be able to help people maximize the effectiveness of those platforms that are already out there, make them better to use. So
that's great. I love that, because like you said, there are a lot of really great resources out there. I just like, I know probably for me and so many others, we just don't use those capabilities. And I'm thinking a lot, especially right now as my daughter gets older. Like, we're having really intentional conversations right now, and she knows like to turn her eyes like at the TV when something's like not like when she knows something is
Mhm.
off and different things like that. But to make sure that these different things are protected with things I already have. I think,
Yeah.
that is me as a father. That's just such a great like peace of mind to have.
Yeah.
And it's nice that I don't have to like spend tons of money on something else. Like, and
Yeah.
maybe we do find out that like, hey, what you have and what you're wanting to do with it isn't enough. And I like, you probably have recommendations out the wazoo for things like that.
Yeah.
But
There's
to
so
be able
many.
to have that level
Sorry.
of expertise is awesome.
Yeah, there's actually a ton of free options out there that people aren't even aware of that they can actually take advantage of and deploy them in their mobile or home devices, and it doesn't cost them another dime. There's so many things that are out there that just people don't even know that exist, and some of them don't cost anything. Some of them have higher price points, but yeah, just helping people understand what is available and being able to use it the right way.
I love it. Well, I think that is really the heart of this podcast of ArkCybr, and even some stuff you and I have planned for the future with some guides that we're going to make and different things. Like, really, ArkCybr is really about that equipping of
Mm,
the parents, of the families, of the individuals to
yeah.
really make a safer internet experience, but utilizing the brain of a cybersecurity expert. Well, Sean, thank you so much for sharing your personal story. Thank you for doing this. I love that we're getting to do this podcast together. But I'm also really excited for the different things you have planned to resource and equip families in the future. So, listeners, if you want to follow along on this journey, if you want to participate, if you want to see the different things that come out from Sean and ArkCybr, here's a couple things you can do. One, you can donate. You can go to the Pay It Forward page and help families like yours, individuals like you, help Sean help them secure their devices, their networks, and really help give that peace of mind to them. You can subscribe to our email list that we're going to have, and we're going to be sending out different updates with podcast episodes, at different guides as we come up with them. As we enter into, start of the school year, as we
Mm,
enter into Christmas shopping time, things, different seasons like that. What are things you can be on the watch out for? What are different solutions for your family to help keep them safe? Also, follow us on social media. We'll put all the links in the description, so please make sure you follow us there to keep up to date. And we would absolutely love it if you would ask questions. Sean
yeah.
is a cybersecurity expert. He is an ethical hacker. He knows about a lot of the different products that are out there. He's been keeping tabs on those things, and he knows so much. He is a wealth of information, and I know he would love to answer your questions. So in the link in the description, there's a place for you to ask a question. So would you please, if you have one, send us a question, and we'd love to answer it on a future episode. So thank you for joining us on this initial episode. I hope that this was a blessing. I hope you got to know Sean a little bit more and his heart for just kind of what's going on in these future episodes and what ArkCybr is all about.
Just do something. Doing nothing is no longer an option.